Hey fam, welcome to the Free Trail Podcast and our new presenting sponsor. We're so happy to now be working with The Feed. Thefeed.com/free trail is where you need to go. It is the one-stop shop for all your training and racing nutrition needs. They have over 200 of the world's best nutrition brands stocked in one website. It's a fantastic resource. We've been big customers for a long time. We're really proud to work with them. Some of my favorite products that you can find at thefeed.com/free trail. Gnarly Nutrition Whey Protein Powder. I like the chocolate flavor. I have some of this after every one of my workouts and long runs. For in-run nutrition, Orange Drank. You'll see my big dumb face on it. Also from Gnarly Nutrition, enhanced sodium concentration here in the world's best fueling drink mix. Finally, HVMN, Ketone IQ. I have 2 of these ketone shots basically every single day, once before I go running and once in the middle of the afternoon when I need a little extra energy. Go to thefeed.com/free trail and you're going to get an $80 credit, free money to spend at thefeed.com. It'll be $20 right away and then $20 every 90 days thereafter. You'll also get a sweet Trail Running Will Save the World water bottle. Again, that's thefeed.com/free trail. You'll get $80 credit to spend on your favorite nutrition products. And if you are international, they do ship internationally as well. So you can take care or at least take advantage of that great offering from The Feed. Big thanks to The Feed for supporting and thank you for watching the podcast. Lotti Brinks, welcome to the Free Trail Podcast. I feel like we've seen a lot of each other this spring and it's nice to see you again.
We have. And every time was really fun. I'm really excited to be here. Very honored you invited me on the show. Yeah, excited.
Well, yeah, and it's always great to connect. And I feel like this is my first opportunity to really get to know you. The last couple of times we've seen each other, you've been on the back end of 2 heroic performances, once at the Big Alta 50k and just a couple weekends ago at the Gorge Waterfalls 100k, both races you won, and we'll come around to talk about those in a little bit. But as is usual here, Lotti, my opening question for you, what makes you you? What are your unique strengths and weaknesses? How do they show up in your life?
It's a very tricky question. I thought about it a lot. And I think that we are all born with a unique personality, but what really makes me is all the itty bitty, teeny tiny decisions that I made throughout my life, and consequently, all the people that I connected with and that I met throughout my life. So, for example, like a teeny tiny decision that I made when I was in high school to choose a biology class over a chemistry class led to me meeting my biology teacher who got me into running. Without that teeny tiny decision, I would have never started running. I would have never made it over to the States, would have never met my husband, would not be living the life that I'm living right now. And I feel like even though my life could have still been great in a different way, I feel like what makes me would be totally different. So I really think it's all the little things that add up and eventually snowball into what is your life now.
So interesting. And it is fun to meditate on the counterfactuals of what would have happened if you didn't meet that biology teacher. Where would you be at this point? Life might look very differently.
I think about it all the time. I don't think about it in like a hypothetical, like what if, I love my life and I'm really excited that I am where I am, but I am thinking back and I'm really grateful for all these teeny decisions that I made that led me to where I am today.
So cool, Lotti. Well, I always think of unique places from which we can jump into these conversations. And because you and I don't know each other super well, I feel like this is a great opportunity to just do a lot of fact finding about you. But the place that I wanted to start is your design background. At the Big Alta before the race, you gifted me a patch that is beautiful. And I should have brought it up here for a prop here for those who watch the podcast, but it's a patch that says cockle-doodle-doo, have a great shred, which was a silly little tagline that I came up with in a video spontaneously before the Big Alta that you transformed into a physical artifact. And I really appreciated it. But what it betrayed was an innate talent that you have for design. So tell us about your design background and where that passion originated from.
Yeah, I was always very creative growing up, from when I was a little kid. And after high school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. It was either, going back to my biology teacher, it was either like something in that direction or something completely opposite, like something very creative, very like with more imagination, I guess. So I ended up going in that direction. And that's also how I ended up in the States, because I'm originally from Germany. I was recruited to run at SCAD, that's the Savannah College of Art and Design. And that's where I really honed my creative skills, my design skills and creativity. And that's where everything kind of stems from.
So tell me more about that. Like, you were recruited to a design school, though. So my guess is that you intentionally sought out that type of an educational institution. It wasn't something that was coincidental that an Academy of Design reached out to you to also be an athlete. Was that something that was intentional for you to hone your craft further? I mean, it seems like that was the professional trajectory you probably saw yourself going down.
Yeah, totally. I really wanted to do something creative, and I wasn't really sure exactly what. And I wanted to also learn something practical, because my parents, they encouraged me no matter what, but it was definitely oh, you shouldn't just like paint or something. So I ended up studying industrial design / product design, and I really loved it. That's also how me and my husband met. He was also an industrial design major. And out of that major and out of the classes that we took together, we kind of started our first little startup, making chef knives and kitchen knives. And that kind of led into what we're doing now, which is very different from kitchen knives. But we now own a small creative studio where we make all sorts of things. So that's kind of where everything led to.
I want to hear more about that in a second. So you were born in Germany before attending design school in Savannah, Georgia, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that story, because it feels like a big personal adjustment for a young woman to make, moving from a European country to the American South. How did that transition materialize for you, and what was the adjustment like?
So what happened is that, going back to my biology teacher, for me, it was either I was really interested in biology and thought maybe I want to study something in that field, but I also really wanted to explore my creative side and, like hone in those skills. But he also brought in this other side, which was running. And he ended up being my coach through high school, which we don't have high school teams like the US does. So it was really just me and him trying to like make me faster. And I eventually got to German nationals, and that's where I was approached by a recruiting agency, and they connected me with the coach at SCAD, which was, you listeners probably know Patrick Reagan, mm-hmm. who then recruited me to run for SCAD. So it was either like this whole like biology side, or it was the art side. And it all kind of just worked out that I was going to do the art side with running in the States.
Wait, so tell me more about Patrick Reagan's role in this whole episode, because I had no idea about this. And I'm sure many of our listeners are familiar with Pat Reagan, also a fantastic professional ultra runner.
Yeah, he's the best. Like he is a huge reason why I ended up taking the plunge and making the move over to the States. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I just thought it'd be fun to, see the world, do some running, do some learn about design. And he was really the one who convinced me that it was a good idea. I remember we used Skype at the time where we were just talking about if I would want to come over and do that. And him and some of my teammates convinced me that was a good idea. And I just went all in. I packed my bags. I had one single duffel. I remember packing a sleeping bag and a sleeping pad because I was like, I don't know if I have a place to stay there. I might sleep in the park because I was just, I really had no idea what I was doing. But he was really one of the characters who reassured me and kind of led the way of me coming to the States.
That's so cool. Shout out to Pat Reagan. And yeah, it feels to me like a brave move to make when you're an 18-year-old. I mean, I went to college about an hour away from where my parents lived. And you came into probably what felt like a big culture shock, even if it did lead you to some amazing relationships and friendships. Speaking of relationships, I know you met your husband in design school also. And so I know you and Aaron, your husband, collaborate closely on things together. Tell us a little bit about that, the two creative forces that you each individually bring and how it evolves into products and services that touch other people's lives.
Yeah, we met in school at SCAD in a metal prototyping class. So what happened is that we were both working on our projects, and eventually we were like, well, if we make all these cool, fun things in class, we might as well do them in our free time and sell them to make some money. And that's how Emilio got started. Emilio is our creative studio, and back then it was mostly a knife making business. So me and my husband, we would spend long nights in the shop at SCAD making really high-end chef knives and kitchen knives. And for a pretty long time, we would sell them. Even after college, we made it an actual business and sold to a few, even James Beard award-winning chefs. And it was a really cool way to get our business started. Now, these days, we spent the last year since we moved to Boise building out our shop. So now we're leaning more heavily into industrial design as a whole and the creative process as a whole. So now we do everything from furniture to textiles to you name it. We really spend a lot of time thinking through our tools and our machines to make sure we're capable of first designing and then making anything we could possibly want to make.
How does that work practically, Lotti? I'm curious because I wonder if you'd be interested in building your own brand like Emilio, the chef knives, or are you now pivoting and making it more of a consultancy where individuals or businesses can commission your design work? Is that the idea?
It'll be probably a mix of things. We're currently, now that we have the shop mostly set up, we're working on our first product line, which we are hoping to launch that by the end of the year. It's always kind of give or take, especially with a lot of, race traveling and just being away for a long time. But it's going to be that, as well as just a studio where anyone can come and we do custom designs for people who, just need anything that they just can't find anywhere else. Anything that's really custom and specific, we can do.
Well, now I'm curious. Are you allowed to divulge what the product is that you're going to bring to market? Is it going to be more knives or something different? You don't have to reveal it.
It's going to be something different. It's going to be something different, but it's probably going to be a line of products, not just a single one.
Okay. Well, hey, we should collaborate. I saw you post that reel of you with your brand new fanny pack that you hand sew yourself. So if we could, make 100 of those with co-branded Free Trail and Emilio,
awesome.
Let's do it. That sounds like a fun little project.
I'm so down.
All right. We'll talk about it after the podcast. Are there any lessons from the knife making business? Because to me, that feels like something that could have been forming in some way, because when you're building your own product and you're trying to build your own brand, and it seems like you sort of wound it down, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
If there were any lessons that emerged from that about the market, about the product, about what you were passionate about designing and making, any lessons from that?
Yeah, I mean, we learned many lessons from the knives. Primarily, it's that we don't just want to double down on a single thing. Like me and my husband, we have so many like interests in design and products, and we want to utilize a lot of different processes. We don't just want to grind metal all day and smoke in all the little metal shavings. We're very interested in all kinds of different disciplines of the creative process. So we don't just want to like have one single product that we focus on, and we also want to make it more accessible for people, for customers too. Like knives, they take a really, really long time to make, and the materials are really expensive. So to actually get a return of investment on a knife, you have to charge so much money, which makes it really difficult to sell and just to kind of build the hype around it. It's really hard to get it going, because it's just such a the level of entry to fancy high-end kitchen knives, it's just very high.
Yeah. And especially if you're making them by hand, it probably limits the volume and the quantities that you can produce that would create a economy of scale to push up your margin. That's really interesting. So forgive me, I really want to learn more about this, but like to me, knowing the patch that you handed to me and that fanny pack that I just referenced, and then you're talking about kitchen knives. There was also a project called the Honey Creek Farms, which to me was like almost an architectural design puzzle. So it feels that you have a really versatile design skill set. Say a few words about Honey Creek Farms and maybe where you see your sweet spot as a designer.
Honey Creek Farms was a project that me and my husband dreamed up in Austin. We bought some property in the hill country of Texas, and it was a lovely piece of property. And we designed a net zero, like off the grid house that we wanted to put on it, and we wanted to make it a little regenerative farm. And we put a lot of thought into the designs and into all the materials and everything. It never actually came to life because COVID hit and material prices spiked and construction prices were insane. But the silver lining is that we then realized, well, Austin is not really the place for us to be anyway. We want somewhere where we can have access to mountains, where there are public lands, where there are endless trails. And that was ultimately why we moved to Boise. And now we love it here, and we couldn't see ourselves living anywhere else at the moment. So it was a really fun project. It was a little heartbreaking that we had to cancel it, but at the end, it all worked out.
What about the partnership with your husband, and maybe nailing in on what you see your specialty as? My wife and I have a professional partnership also. She brings much needed, super valuable things to the table that I certainly lack, and vice versa. Talk about that partnership that you guys have created, and also like what I was referencing, patches, sort of soft goods, hard goods, knives, architecture, design. It feels like there's nothing you can't do creatively.
Yeah, we have a lot of interests, maybe too many, arguably too many. I'm mostly on the soft goods side. I love working with textiles. I love sewing. I love embroidering. I do like tufting, all kinds of things, leather work. My husband is more so on the like metal and wood side, but we overlap in a lot of ways. We always try to, when we design products, we try to think about all the different aspects on how we can collaborate. And usually we try to And it's a really like the design language of products that have, hard edges, but also like a soft touch to it. That really speaks to us. And that's kind of how we work together.
So cool. And for those who watch the podcast, it seems like you're sitting in your workshop now, and it is probably a cool place to get a tour of. Maybe eventually you'll entertain me by showing me some of the stuff that you work on. So in reading some of your stuff that's been written about you and that you've sort of written about your own process on social media and otherwise, it feels like joy and optimism are things that you focus on in training as much as you do like volume and fueling and those certainly important details. Expand on that philosophy and where it was born. Where does the joy and optimism fit with your life as an athlete?
The joy is really my driving force. I love just being out on the trails. And I always have to remind myself that I get to do this. No one is forcing me to run miles on miles and miles. It's something that I'm choosing. It's something that I do for me, as much as running can be a team sport and it takes a village to perform. At the end of the day, it's, at least to me, it might sound silly, but it's like my time where I can be selfish. Like I can spend time outside. I can take the time out of my day to do it, and I don't feel bad about using all the time. And to make it like worth it, I guess, to like make the sacrifice of time, I need it to be joyful. Like I have to tell myself, I don't have to tell myself, I feel it, that it just makes me a better person and it makes me happy. And that's what drives me out of the door every day to get the miles in and, train hard.
I know you've talked about how in 2022 you had a bit of a rough year. You were still just getting started. Was that a moment where you could identify a lack of joy or optimism in your training?
Yeah, I think in 2022, I kind of just got caught up in wanting to perform. I had a pretty good rookie season. I started trail running in 2021 and had found pretty early like success, and everything just kind of came easy. And then in 2022, it hit me where everything was just really hard, and I had so many like freak things happen to me in races, and I got really discouraged. And part of it was also that I just took it too seriously. And that's a lesson I learned in 2022, that if I take it too seriously, it takes the joy away, and then I just don't perform well.
That's a lesson I'm learning right now with our little business too. And something that always stuck with me in my racing career was that those moments in life when you were just content and happy with your circumstances, and not trying to control and push everything in a certain direction, but to almost accept or surrender to the circumstances that you're being confronted with. That's when you actually really achieve your potential as an athlete. And it's so true across any discipline, whether it's sport or business or relationships, anything like that. So we should probably do a little bit of more background on your running. Obviously, like we said, your biology teacher in Germany, thank goodness, introduced you to the sport. Pat Reagan sort of maybe pushed you in the sport collegiately, at least. And I know he's sort of the ambassador for Savannah, Georgia.
Yeah.
Tell us about, when the focus shifted to that rookie season on the trails in 2021.
It was really quite random. I only ran my freshman and sophomore year in college. I kind of got injured a lot in my junior year, so I had to stop running competitively, and I ended up joining the cycling team instead and was on the bike competitively. But I kind of stopped running for 5 years or so, at least like running in any like actual, like I didn't train for anything. I still ran like 2 miles here and there. But then during the pandemic, I kind of picked it up again just because I wanted to be outside and I wanted to, fill my time. And very randomly, we have like hike and bike trail around the lake in Austin, and it's a perfect 10 miles. And one morning I woke up and was like, I wonder how many times I could run around the lake. And then I made it 3 times. I ran a 50K around the lake. And then Pat actually reconnected with me and was like, hey, there's this thing called ultra running. You should probably try it out. And that's kind of how I got back into it. And then maybe, I think 2 months later, I ran my first trail race, which was Bandera down in the hill country, not too far from Austin.
Which you won. It was the 50K as opposed to the 100K. The 50K. But I went back and was looking at some of your historical results. And yeah, I mean, it's been a very short and successful career that you've had starting in 2021 and now really bursting onto the scene in 2024. And as we were talking about at Gorge, I just feel like you're really on the precipice of discovering your true potential. And we'll make our way to talking about Western states here in a little bit. But back to 2021, you do your first 50K, then your first 100K, and then your first 100-miler in quick succession. So you fell down the rabbit hole in a major way. Talk about that season and in what way it set you on the path you're on today.
Yeah, I think back to that season and I didn't think it was like a lot at the time, but now I'm like, wait, I ran my first 50K, my first 100K, and my first 100-miler within like, I don't know, 9 months so of my first season. I probably wouldn't do that again, but it worked out, so I can't complain. But yeah, that was my rookie season, and I thought I was just so excited of being part of the community. And I remembered it was actually funny because I ran Rocky Raccoon in February, which was 100K, and it was a qualifying race. Like you get like a ticket in the lottery for Western states if you finish it. And at that time I started hearing about golden tickets and Western states, and I still didn't really know what it was, but I ended up signing up for Javelina just because I thought, 100 miles, that sounds awesome, but I didn't really understand the hype around golden tickets because I thought, I already got a ticket at Rocky Raccoon. Like, what's the big deal? It's not that hard. And then I ran Javelina, and I realized that a golden ticket is different from a lottery ticket. And I realized that like on lap 3 of Javelina, when I, went back and forth with Tessa Chessa, fighting for like the ticket that I didn't even know was meaningful. So that was my rookie season, which was really fun. And I learned a lot, including what the difference between a lottery ticket and a golden ticket was.
It's so funny. You're the second person on the podcast to have that confusion. The first was Danny Jones, the great Kiwi ultra runner, who's also going to be running Western states this year. And he did it at Lake Sonoma 100K, going to it with the express purpose of I need to get my golden ticket to Western states, came across the line sort of like celebrating that he had gotten it. And the race director had to explain to him, no, buddy, you just got the qualifier, not the golden ticket. But he has since earned his way into Western states proudly and finished, I think, 5th last year. And he'll be back again this year. So a funny story that the foreigners, maybe we need to do a better job with articulating that too. Well, I guess you were living in the US at that time and Danny was living in New Zealand, but you were both new to the scene and now you learned it the hard way. And now you both have your opportunity to actually run. So tell me more about the move to Boise, because at a certain point you said that 2022 was maybe a suboptimal year performance-wise because you were taking it too seriously, but also like the move to Boise it feels to me like a move to take your running more seriously, right? Put yourself in a geography that is more applicable or better simulates the races that you're competing in as compared to in Austin, Texas. How did the move to Boise Was it influenced at all by, the training grounds and opportunities and athletic community that would help you rise to this next level?
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely shaped by my need to be closer to the mountains. But that wasn't the like ultimate factor. Like me and my husband, we both love being outside. We both love taking our truck out and like going to cool places and just camping and mountain biking, and we both love winter sports too. So it wasn't necessarily just because of running. It was more so that our lifestyle as a whole fit better here in Boise, Idaho than it did in Austin, Texas. Like in Austin, it was just always so hard to get anywhere because you always had to drive for so many hours to just get out of the state. And I say that as a person who really loves Austin. Like Austin is a really cool city.
Awesome city.
It's awesome, but it just didn't serve us anymore. And it was really for the best that we moved here. And I see that now, like reflecting upon the last year of living here, it's just like me and my husband, we flourished here in Boise. Like we have built such a great community. My running has been so much better. I love exploring new trails, and it's just endless. It just does not get old. And it was one of these decisions that was kind of like a fluke decision where everyone was like, why Boise? And we're like, well, we just kind of picked it and we committed to the decision and this is what we're doing. And it ended up being the best decision we could have made.
Going back to where we started the podcast, you never know how powerful each individual decision is going to be on your life. Say a few more words about the community and specifically about the Cowgill Crew, because we've never talked about Cowgill on my podcast. And again, it's front of mind because we're just coming off of Gorge a couple of weeks ago. And they also had a big, I think, footprint at the Big Alta earlier in the spring. And to me, it's the embodiment or like the representation of community.
It's been so great. So for the listeners who don't know what Cowgill is, it's a running group that started in Seattle. Aaron Long is the guy who heads it up, a very funny person. I love him. He's great. I met him at the Big Alta, so that was awesome. But we started our own little herd, which is not so little anymore, in Boise at the beginning of the year. And it's just incredible how fast it grew. It was like 5 people in the beginning. It was me and my friends Philippe and Sydney Boutros, and Gus Gibbs was part of it. And we had like 5 people, and now every Thursday like 40, 45 people show up, and it's just incredible how many people come out and want to run together and want to share the trails together. And it's been absolutely lovely. I look forward to every Cowgill run on Thursday.
And so for our listeners, again, what makes Cowgill obvious visually is that they wear these cow print hats and shorts oftentimes, but there is like a powerful feeling of community. And I think there's an important aspect of giving back. At least that's been my observation. They manned an aid station, volunteered at Gorge Waterfalls for a whole day as a group to sort of give back together and help other people on their trail running ambitions, and also go out and get after it themselves and push each other to be better athletes. I think it's a great thing. And it's awesome to see their expansion, as you mentioned, being Seattle based originally and now sort of moving into other geographies, including Boise. And yeah, shout out to Gus and Sydney and Philippe, all good friends of mine there in the Boise area. Talking about your training, when we were at Gorge, you mentioned that you had previously been self-coached for a while, but that as of December, you were working with Tyler Green. And to me, I don't know, it felt like, wow, cool. Like it makes perfect sense. And what a dynamic duo. I have immense respect for both you guys. I've known Tyler longer and have immense respect for him, both as an athlete, as a person, and as a coach. So talk about what motivated that partnership? I'm sure a lot of people would be interested to hear, like, why did you choose Tyler, and in what ways has he changed or influenced your training?
Yeah, so far it's been working great, and I really love working with Tyler. It's been awesome. The way I got there was that, so I mentioned how Patrick Reagan recruited me to run for SCAD, and he was my coach throughout college. And then we kind of picked it back up when I ran 3 loops around the lake, and he coached me for my rookie season. And in 2022, or shortly after 2022 kind of wrapped, I kind of reflected upon my training and was like, oh, I really need to, put more joy back into my running and take it less seriously. And that's when I started coaching myself, because I really kind of wanted to see what works for me if no one tells me what to do. And I coached myself for almost all of 2023. And that has worked really well. But all of that is only with the knowledge that I learned mostly from Pat and my biology teacher in high school. So I didn't really know, like I just really wanted to learn a different perspective and learn from a different person who trains differently, because most of my training in Austin was a lot of flat speed work, because that's all I had access to, and maybe some treadmill hiking. So I didn't really know how to work with the new terrain that I had access to. And that's part of why I hired Tyler, was because he knows how to build in vert into my training. He knows how to incorporate hill workouts, and he is really good at prescribing like strength training and stuff like that I've never really focused on before. And I think that's a big part of why I feel so strong and so fit now, is because I can run harder because I'm stronger, because I do all these little things outside of running that I haven't done before. And it's just really cool to learn different ways of training and different, forms of workouts, I guess.
Aside from the training modalities, was there anything personally that drew you to Tyler? Like, in other words, the reason why it sort of struck me in the way that it did when you told me is that, I don't know, I could sort of see pieces of you in his athletic career, right? Or like, I could see an athlete like you looking up to him, not only for what he's achieved as an athlete, but how he carries himself. Is there anything there like that drew you to him on a personal level rather than just the X's and O's of training?
I absolutely look up to him. It's like he has an incredible career, and it's something I strive for. I talked to a couple coaches actually at the beginning of the year, or December actually, end of last year. And with Tyler, it just kind of clicked. I just really liked the way he was thinking about things more long term, and he really understood that I needed to have fun and I needed to bring the joy with it. And I think he understood that more than some of the other coaches I talked to. And that's how it really clicked. And I think he just spends a lot of time actually trying to understand what I'm trying to achieve with my running as a individual, as a person who has other things going on too.
Yeah.
And also I think he is going to be probably one of the best person to prepare me for Western States as well. Like the way he's raced it and the experience he has on that course was another big factor of why I thought this would be Tyler would be the perfect person to prepare me for it.
Yeah. I was going to say that too, having witnessed the last 3 years where Tyler's finished second, fourth, and second up close and personal. I think I've done finish line interviews with him all 3 years. And I'm just like, man, dude, you keep doing it. You keep doing it. What a great person to help guide and lead you on that journey yourself. Again, we'll come back and talk about that in a sec, but let's back up a step and talk about why you're going to Western States, that being the Grindstone 100k last fall. Again, part of this, it actually sort of what feels like it kickstarted what has felt like this run of emergent success for you, where you've been really consistent and executing at a world-class level at important races. And, winning a golden ticket is sort of a seminal moment for the career of any aspiring professional athlete. So talk a bit about Grindstone 100k and whether or not it felt like a breakthrough to you.
It did. That was definitely the highlight of my year last year. And all my races last year, I think they led up perfectly to Grindstone. It was very much a season that I didn't really plan. I didn't sit down in January and was like, oh, I'm going to run Gorge and then Tillamook Burn and then all the other daybreak races that I ran. And then Grindstone, I kind of just signed up for races as I went along to just like see how I feel and see how like the training that I wrote for myself was working. And I came to Grindstone feeling just like just like very mentally ready for it. Like I felt like fit just fine. Like I felt like I could run fast, but it wasn't like this is the fittest I've ever been. Like no one can it wasn't like that. Like I felt just how I felt for all the other races I ran too, but I was just really ready for it mentally. And I was like I really told myself that this is the day and that I can do it. And I think that belief in myself on that day really helped me like finish that race and win that race and get that golden ticket.
So then backing up a step, I guess it reveals the obvious question of like, after having a breakthrough like that, being a self-coached athlete, was it the reality that you now had the opportunity to go to Western states that made you think it's time to re-engage a coach for this next chapter? Because you could also see it as being like, oh, I've got this figured out on my own. I'm self-coached. I just won a golden ticket event. Again, something that every professional trail runner dreams of doing. At that point, it would have been easy for you to continue on being confident in your own ability to coach yourself.
I definitely went back and forth a bit because part of me was like, why do I need to fix what's not broken? Like it's working. Like, why do I need to change it? But I wanted to think about my career more long term. And I knew that I wasn't doing the little things that I should be doing if I want to still run strong in 10 years, like all the strength training, like plyometrics, like body work, all those kinds of things. And those are things that I don't do unless I'm being told to.
Me too. So, God damn it.
It's something about it. It's just not. Yeah. So that's where I was like, I should take this. If I want to still run in 10 years and I want to compete on a high level, I should probably ask for help.
Who better than Tyler Green? Dude's 40 years old now, and he's as good as anybody at the little stuff and will be a contender to win at Western States again this year. So you just said that in 2023, you intentionally didn't try and create a calendar for yourself. And it feels like now this year, obviously, Grindstone put the bullseye on the calendar June 29th, I think it is this year for Western States, which means you then probably did reverse engineer the season. Was that an intentional thing? Because obviously we'll get around to talking about the Big Alta and Gorge, but with Western States on the calendar, did it motivate you to sort of put a little bit more thought and architecture into the structure of your season?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of had to. Like, there was an obvious thing to do end of June. So I kind of wanted to, I really wanted to race before states as a confidence boost mostly. Like, I know that a lot of people like to just train and train for their big race, but that puts too much pressure on a single race for me. So that's part of why I picked races that I know I would love and that I know there's good community there, that I know I'm going to have fun at. And yeah, that's why I picked the Big Alta and Gorge. because I knew those are going to be great races. And if I perform well, I would really get a good confidence boost to go into the block for Western States.
Okay, so let's talk about both individually briefly, if you don't mind. Starting with the Big Alta, cockle-doodle-doo, have a great shred.
Cockle-doodle-doo.
Tell us about your race there. And I had the pleasure of running with you for probably like 5 miles of it, including down the Whopper before your final climb and descent to victory here in Marinwood. Tell us a bit about that race, how it kicked off your season, and you know, provide a compelling sales pitch for everybody to register for 2025.
Everyone should go do it. It was so fun.
Yeah.
And it's a great early season race, like in a beautiful Marin where the trails are dry mostly, and it's all green and it's beautiful. It was like 70 degrees, 65 degrees maybe on race day. It was amazing. But yeah, I picked it because I wanted like faster-ish kind of race. Like I didn't want to just do like big long races, and the 50k is just enough to kind of, you know, still run hard, but you have to run for a long time. So that kind of is what prompted the Big Alta. I also really wanted to support you guys and a Daybreak Racing. I thought it was really cool that I got to be a part of the first inaugural Big Alta.
Thank you.
Because, you know, I just wanted to be there and be part of the party. But it ended up being a really great season opener for me because I got a good amount of climbing in. I had to run the downhills fast. I had some good competition that I had to run away from. So yeah, overall, Big Alta was the perfect season opener for me, and it led in perfectly to Gorge Waterfalls a few weeks later. I don't know.
6 weeks, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we were really glad to have you and many others support us in that inaugural year too, and we'll always appreciate that. Moving on to Gorge, what I'm most interested to hear you talk about is something you said after the race, and that you applied a new racing strategy. Obviously, Elsa McDonald had a pretty large lead. I think it was like almost 20 minutes at a certain point. And that you said that you had intentionally held back, and that's not usually in your nature, that you usually like to put your nose in the fight a little bit more. Tell me about that intentional change in race strategy and how it ended up manifesting in another great victory.
Yeah, so the goals at Gorge, I had a few goals. The first one was to just be out there for many hours and remind the body that I can run for a long time. With 100 miles coming up, I just kind of needed that as like I said before, a confidence boost that I can do it. I really wanted to run faster than I did the year before. But then I also wanted to practice a new race strategy for me, which it's not necessarily new, but I like to be close to the lead because I get very discouraged if I'm not. It happens that I'm like, I don't know, like it depends on the race, but it happens that I'm like not anywhere close to the lead. And then I'm like, oh, what am I doing this for anyway? Like I'm so far back, there's no way I can catch up again. And then I get really discouraged and frustrated. And the thing is that at Western States, it's such a competitive race and it's 100-miler, which I have only ever raced 100-miler, and Javelina was very different from Western States. I'm probably not going to be leading the race. Like that's just the reality, and I don't want to be leading the race. So I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable, not close to the lead. So Gorge was a great practice run for that because it was competitive. There are a lot of fast women out there, and I had lots of good company. So the way we planned it out was that the first 20 miles, I just hang out with someone I like. We can talk. We just let the miles click by, and I got to run with Christina for a long time, and that was really fun. And then in the second third, I guess, I wanted to put myself in position. And in the third, I wanted to really race and go for it and win the race and better my time from last year. And to be fair, I did not plan on letting a 20-minute gap emerge. That was a little too uncomfortable. I did not mean for that to happen, but it happened, and I just had to double down on the last third and run really hard to catch her. And she, like Elsa, ran a great race too.
Yeah. It reminds me of something that I picked up from Rob Krar in my career that is relevant here. And he broke races up into thirds. And he said the first third is composure, the second third is confidence, and the last third is compete. Composure, confidence, compete. It feels like you had a textbook execution of the Rob Krar strategy.
I feel like I've heard that from a few people now.
I don't know if he invented that, but that's who I picked it up from. It was almost a Tyler Green style race too. So yeah, I mean, to what extent that new strategy was influenced by people who are more experienced than you, because I think we'll get to this in a second, but I mean, you're 28 years old and you're knocking on the doorstep of the biggest opportunity of your life, racing at Western States. With this different strategy at Gorge, which was your dress rehearsal, the final major racing opportunity before stepping to the start line at Western States, it is a unique time to implement an entirely new, racing philosophy. Was it something that was influenced by somebody else, or was it something that you recognized in yourself because you knew you weren't going to be at the front of the Western States field?
I think it was a mix. I think Tyler definitely influenced that. We went over the race plan like the day before, where it's like you can make up any amount of plans you want. Like once the gun goes off, it's just kind of, you're never really in control of how your race goes until you're running. So there's he told me a few different things. And definitely influenced the way I raced, because I know I went back and forth a little bit with my pacer. I'm like, I just want to go out in the front. And then he was like, no, you told me you're not going to do that. So yeah, I feel like I have a lot to learn still. And it's really cool that there are so many people in my life that have more experience than I do. And it would be silly of me to ignore their advice and ignore what they have to say, because people know how to race better than I do.
I think the mark of great athletes are consistency, range, and the ability to perform well in many different styles. Yeah. And this is something I mentioned to Tyler after he was second at Western States last year too, not to make the whole conversation about Tyler. I just think it's relevant to your story now that you guys are in this coach-athlete relationship, and now seeing the ways in which both your careers, your skills sort of mirror one another's, is that he's done that, right? At Western States, he's been the guy who hung way back and then ran through the field to land on the podium. And then last year, he was the guy who was in the mix the whole time, earning another second place. So his two individual second place performances at Western States were entirely different, right? So he's able to execute in two totally different strategies. And I think, you exhibiting that too only portends more future success. So we're now did you have anything you wanted to say to expand on that?
No, it kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like when the gun goes off, the race, your race plan kind of goes out of the window. So you have to be prepared to run from the front or run from the back and still go chase your goals, no matter how you race. So I totally agree. It's being able to adjust and being able to, make your strategy work based on the race is super important.
So cool. Makes you dangerous too, because then you never know. You're like, oh, Lottie's behind me, but like, who knows? Who knows? She's just biding her time like she did at Gorge. Anyway, we are now 2 months removed from Western States. Your Strava this morning said about to start the Western States block. What do the next 2 months look like? How do you think about putting yourself in the best possible position to have the race of your dreams 2 months from now?
Yeah, I think we're gonna mix speed work with lots of work with mileage, like the normal. There's not going to be anything crazy. Yeah. I'm going to train the way I've trained for Gorge. I'm going to train the way I've trained for other races too. I'm assuming it'll be very course specific towards the end of it. I am very excited to actually go down there end of May and be part of the training camp. I think that's going to be a really big and really fun weekend for me. And yeah, I'm just excited to get going. It's always hard for me after a race to take some downtime because I'm just so eager to jump into the next thing. But I took the last week really easy. Next week is still going to be easy. But I'm really eager to dive right into that Western States block. It'll be really fun.
So one of the things we were talking about, Gorge, and you're 28, you've got the world ahead of you. You've got a huge opportunity at Western States. And you could approach it, you could think of it in one of two ways, like this is my chance to like really put the Lotti Brinks name on the international map, more or less. I mean, those of us like people like me and Corinne know who Lotti Brinks is, and we have known who you are for a long time. But, it is an opportunity to really establish like a career for yourself in the sport. But also you're only 28 and you can use this as a sort of a fact-finding mission and an opportunity to grow and learn as an athlete. How do you balance those two thoughts? Do you hold them both in your head at the same time? Like you remain open to the best possible scenario without putting too much pressure on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely want to do my best and place as high as possible. And I'm not going to shy back from going for it when it's time to go for it. But I also have a, long-term plan of what I want to achieve in the sport. And things can be stepping stones. And I don't have to nail it on my first go at Western States. Like if I don't have the best day that I could possibly have, then I'll just have to come back. And that wouldn't be so bad either. Like I would love to come back and come back and come back again until I'm satisfied with the result. So I don't think, like, obviously I want to have the best day possible. And obviously I want to perform to the best of my abilities. But I'm also happy with like using it as a process goal to then nail it the next year.
Treat it as a long-term project. There's a great lineage of champions who had to treat it as a long-term project before they had their breakthroughs.
Exactly.
So, and you will have your first try. It makes me want to ask as we start winding down here. This is like your fourth year in the sport. Western States is amazing and deserves its full attention, but you probably do have big dreams of things that you can do over the next decade plus that you're exposed to the sport. You just mentioned, having big dreams. Is there anything else that, really inspires you in trail and ultra running that are things that you're going to want to pursue at some point in your career?
I think, on the shorter term goals, I guess, like within the next 2 years or so, is that I want to get comfortable running international races. I feel very comfortable like mixing it up with the competition here. Like I feel like at this point, I know most people, I know my competition, I know how racing here works. But I'm just still, I feel like an imposter when I go run international races. And I want to grow my confidence that I can show up at international races and perform and really go for it and really show what I can do without feeling like I have to be in like the third row at the start line.
What about qualifying for the German national team? Because the World Championships come back next year. Is that something that interests you?
Yeah, maybe. I have to kind of figure out
the qualification and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm about to start my application for citizenship here too. So I eventually have to figure out if I want to start for Team USA or Team Germany. So that's going to be a whole nother story that's going to come soon.
Well, we would love to have you on the American team, but now I'm just remembering because Katarina Hartmuth, who was second at UTMB last year, and Lotti Brinks, I'm sure there's a couple others. You guys could put together a great
we could.
German women's squad at the World Championship.
The German team is strong.
Is it really? Awesome.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, especially in the long. I think in the long ones, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Hannes Naumberger too, Hannes the Adonis, as I call him. But yeah, the German trail and ultra running is really strengthening, exploding, just like it is everywhere else in the world, I guess. Well, Lotti, it's so great to have a chance to get to know you and talk more long form instead of just me making you give speeches from the top step of the podium at our races this spring. And again, it's been an honor to have you at both the Big Alta and Gorge, and we appreciate your support, and we're certainly going to be rooting for you at Western States. My closing question for you, as it is for everybody, is who is one person that you admire inside or outside of sport, living or dead, and why do you admire that person?
I admire so many people. I feel like every time I step on a start line, I look around me and I'm just in awe of all these like dedicated, passionate people who have the courage to show up at a start line. But if I single out one single person that I admire the most, that's my friend and teammate, Jessie Scarpone. Not many people are going to know her. She was one of the big reasons why I ended up running at SCAD. She was my first real running mentor. And she was one of those people who made it look so effortless to be ambitious and have big goals, but keep it really fun. And she was just the silliest, most sarcastic person I've ever met. And I don't really think that she ever knew how much of an impact she had on me and my running. So yeah, she's definitely one of the people I looked up to the most in my running career. And unfortunately, she passed away in 2019 due to some underlying heart conditions. And she was like a multiple time All-American, really fast, the healthiest, fittest person I knew. So to close out this question or answer, a PSA to all of these listeners that are fast, that run, that are healthy and fit, go get your hearts checked because it's very important.
What a great place to end, Lotti. And it does tie everything back to the beginning, and just
it does.
Everything is uncertain, right? Every decision you make has downstream implications. Nothing is guaranteed. Everything changes. Every moment is sacred. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Lotti. It's great to chat.
Thank you for having me.